Got this text right now from my guy Seth, right? And I just see like in the last, I don't know, today he was fully booked, right? And he told me, every client, like last 4 days, he's already been getting $100 for every single haircut. He just texted me. Every single client is paying him $100 a haircut, right? And it's crazy because literally, he's at this position in life where he's 17 years old, he's in high school, he's making $100 every single cut, right? And just 1 year ago, he was working at a barbershop, sweeping up, not making anything at all, right? And all he really had to do to get from that guy that's like charging like 10, 15 bucks, to get to where he's at right now is, again, he just doesn't care what other people think, right? He was the guy that would be consistent posting the content even when people were laughing at him. He was the guy that believed in the system before there was any proof, right? And he was the guy that trusted himself to just show up every day, even through the ups and downs, and just follow through with things, right? Just be that guy who gets the work done, right? That's just overall, like this one change, right? Because I talked to so many barbers. I have a full 1 hour free course on YouTube going over everything you need to know to make 10K a month as a barber. And I have so much free resources on YouTube. And the one thing that separates all these people that get to 10K a month as a barber and the ones that don't is just, little things here and there within their minds that are holding them back, right? And again, for Yusuf, being a high schooler, being young, it's natural that people are going to make fun of him for what he does. It's natural that he's going to feel self-conscious about what he does, right? He's going to be a little nervous. He's going to be, having that fear of judgment. But at the end of the day, right, overcoming that, what's on the other side of that hurdle, what's on the other side of fear of judgment is, the best version of yourself, right? Yusuf used to be afraid to record in the barbershop because he was afraid of being made fun of by his clients. He was being made fun of, he's afraid of being made fun of in high school by his coworkers. He was afraid of just being that guy that's like the little bro. He was afraid of being little broed by everyone, disrespected. And the same people who were telling him that he couldn't charge more, that his haircuts were trash, that he didn't deserve to charge a certain price, they're now seeing him get $100 every single haircut. And the only thing he did differently was just stop putting these limiting beliefs on himself of how much he could charge, how much he should be making, whether or not the videos were, cringy, right? On the other side of that fear is just him becoming the person that he always wanted to be, right? The one biggest takeaway that, you can take away from Yusuf is don't be that guy that's, letting all these different limiting factors hold you back, right? Don't be the guy that's scared to record because, you're afraid people are going to call you cringy. Don't be the guy that's scared to raise prices because you're afraid people are going to tell you you're not deserving of it. Don't be the guy that is, scared to document your journey because you're afraid of your peers in high school telling you that you have an ego because you make a lot of money, right? At the end of the day, he knows why he's doing all this. He has his reasons, right? So why worry about what other people think, especially people who aren't where you'd want to be or people who just, aren't doing better than you? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, right? This is the same hurdle I kind of had to overcome, right? Being that guy that I was always worried about the opinions of others. I was worried to raise my prices. I was basically in the same position. I didn't want to raise my prices. I don't want to raise my prices because I was scared of people telling me I charged too much. I was overcharging. I was a scammer, right? I had limiting beliefs about starting cash flow barbers, getting a mentorship program going. There's so many of them that are scams. I didn't want people to call me a scammer. I was completely insecure about the fact that people didn't believe in my product. And then I kind of realized like people are never going to believe in me, right? With cash flow barbers, the same people that were, probably telling people I was a scam and, leaving the messages undelivered when I was just trying to reach out, give some free value and get clients. Now that they see proof of concept, they're coming back and asking for help. And I don't blame them, right? That's how this stuff goes. People aren't ever supposed to believe you at the start, right? But I just had to get over that fear, right? What if people see me this way, right? What if people perceive me as being the guy that's money hungry? What if people perceive me as being the guy that is cringy and I make YouTube videos and, I'm putting myself out there and providing free education? Like getting over that fear of worst case scenario, how people perceive you, a lot of times it's just you, with your own insecurities, right? How are people going to perceive me? Worst case scenario, right? And by not being able to get over that fear, it's kept me stuck. Me being the guy that was too afraid to do consultation videos and only sticking to part 1 videos where I didn't have to talk, or 3 clip sequences where I didn't have to show my face and I didn't have to talk, it limited the amount of new clients I was able to get. Once I started finally being confident enough to step on camera and talk and use my voice and do consultation videos, everything changed, right? I started getting so many more new clients. I didn't have to rely on trends to actually convert, because my content was selling based off who I was. My content was selling based off a problem that I solved, and it was converting directly into new haircut clients willing to pay a big price, right? I could be the guy that continues hiding behind the camera, and I don't think that's bad at all. It got me to where I am, right? But until I was able to overcome that hurdle of worrying what other people would think about my voice, me talking, me being on camera, until I was able to overcome that, I was never able to actually, get to where I wanted to be, charging 100 a cut, right? When I wanted to raise my prices, from 25 to 40, I was worried people would say it's too big of a jump. I was worried people would make fun of me and say my haircuts weren't worth the price that I wanted to charge. But at the end of the day, right, those limiting beliefs that I told myself, like what if, that was the biggest thing keeping me back, right? I was afraid to move out, right? I thought people would say, what if you move out? And I just thought people would have a lot of questions. Like, does this guy have a bad relationship with his family? I don't. I see them multiple times a week, right? But it's like, well, why? Why is this guy living on his own at 19? It's kind of not normal, right? Like, where did he go wrong, right? Or, being a barber. Why isn't this guy in college? Why isn't he just, kind of taking the traditional route? Why isn't he, trying to work a 9 to 5? Right? Is he a bum? Like, I was so worried about how people perceived me that it held me back from actually doing the things I wanted to do and being the person I wanted to become. And it got to the point where every single decision was just based off, how are people going to perceive this? And I think it's a trait that I just see too much. I see it in my own, like with people around me. I grew up seeing it within certain people in my family, and I just realized like how much it was holding us back. This whole idea of, I'm not going to do something because I'm afraid of how somebody else is going to look at me. I'm not going to do this because what are other people going to say? And if you ask someone these questions, it'll really come down to it. You're going to realize like why they're making decisions. Their decision-making process is based off a worst-case scenario, based off of fear, right? You can't get this car because people are going to think you have a really big ego. People are going to think, people are going to think you have a really big ego, right? Or, oh, you can't get this car because people are going to think you're broke, right? You can't buy a 2013 Acura because, people are going to think you're a brokey driving that car. Or people are going to just not respect you driving that. Who cares, right? Who cares how other people perceive you? Like, that just held me back for so long. And now when I see it in other people, it makes me so upset that I stayed stuck in that mindset. And I stayed stuck in that decision-making pattern for so long that I literally let other people's opinions dictate everything about my life. How I dressed, where I worked, what I said, what car I bought, what haircuts, everything. And it's normal as you're young, but the sooner you can overcome this idea that, fear of judgment, right? The sooner you can overcome that, the better, right? The sooner you stop worrying about how you're going to be perceived and just be yourself, the better. Who cares how people perceive you, It's that simple, man. But the whole reason, I was able to start making more money, obviously I had the knowledge, I learned, I had the business systems, I was able to scale up and charge more, attract 100 new clients a month, right? But beyond that, I overcame this stuff behind the scenes. And you could have all the knowledge in the world. You could go through all my YouTube videos and have all the knowledge on how to make 10K a month. But until you're the guy who's consistent, until you're the guy who believes in what you say and that you can do what you want to do, until you're the guy who stops being, afraid of what other people are going to be. Because a lot of you guys will never even want to charge 100 simply because you are so worried about what other people are going to say. Simple as that. So many of you guys could be in the position where and I've seen it, people will be in the position where they're meant to charge $100 a cut. They have the numbers, they have the knowledge, they have the work ethic, but they simply just don't believe that they deserve to be that person. They're worried about what other people are going to say. They're worried that people are going to call them out. They're worried people are going to make fun of them. They're worried that the coworkers are going to talk. They're just so worried about what are other people going to say about my actions and my results that they don't even take that step. And that ultimately ends up, just keeping you in a position where you're stuck, right? Overcome this fear. Overcome the fear of judgment and your entire life will change. Simple as that, right? Look what it did for me. Look what it did for Yusuf. Simple as that. Overcome the fear of judgment, right?